live here on this wonderful place called planet Earth, and we're going to travel right here in this auditorium to some marvelous places on planet Earth, and then quite a few places beyond. And we're going to do it in about 20 minutes. We're going to travel to some places that are some of my favorite destinations that I have a feeling are some of yours too. But let me start at the beginning by saying I am A Barron. I write fantasy novels. You're going to hear a lot about some of them. But the reason we can travel to all of those places is that my favorite way to travel is in the imagination. Because when you go there, anywhere in your imagination, there's no limits where you go, how fast you get there, or what adventures may happen to you when you're there. Let me start, though, by saying that where I grew up was half here in very, very near where we are right now, in the town of Harvard, Mass., just not far from Groton. And then when I was about 11 years old, my parents and family, we moved to Colorado. And so my second half of my childhood was on a ranch in Colorado, and that's where I live now. Next year. On that ranch, though, there was lots of sources of inspiration. Jim, next. And one of them I want to introduce you to now, because you'll hear about her a little bit later. This is my mother, and she's with one of her friends. Does anybody here know what kind of bird that is? It's not a bald eagle, but it is an eagle. It's a golden eagle, that's right. And you can see quiet please, you can see they have a special kind of friendship. This person who is my mother was very much a hero in my life and my family's life, and you'll see a little bit more about what that meant later on. Let me now show you my greatest source of inspiration next. And that is, growing up on the ranch, I used to write under an apple tree in the courtyard of our ranch. And this is a picture drawn by my youngest daughter, who, as you'll notice a little about her sense of humor, you can tell where that apple is about to come down and clonk me on the head. But just to give you a feeling for how much inspiration I get from her and her brothers and sisters, next, you'll see now my family. These are my kids, 5 of them, my wife, Kari, and our dog, Sasha. And I'll tell you a little secret, which is that all of my kids, all of them, are named after mountains. That's right, they're all named for mountains. And if you want to know their names, in the question and answer session, you can ask me, and I'm happy to tell you. But I will give you a hint that every one of their mountain names is in a beautiful part of the world, and it gives us a great excuse to go hiking and camping in all these wonderful places. So, now that you've met my 5 kids, and oh, by the way, I should point out, there's no mischief at all in these kids. No mischief, no humor. Like, for example, look at that redhead there. No mischief, right? He would never play any jokes on his dad, right? Wrong. Totally wrong. I have lots of fun with these great kids. Now that you've met my 5 kids, so I want you to meet my other children. Yes, it's true, there's more. Next. Now these are my book children. Now, yes, I know, they're not as cute as the regular kids, but the reason I say that they are like children, is that when you're an author and you're telling stories, you're trying to develop those stories and give them your very best, a lot like being a parent or a teacher. You're trying to give a young person their very best equipment, and then, depending on who that person is, you're trying to help them be the best they can be, and then they go off into their own lives. And that's very much what it's like when you write a story. So we're going to meet some of these coming up in a sec. But now, next, I would like to start us in Colorado, where I live now. I took this picture last summer in one of my favorite hiking places called the Maroon Bells Wilderness near Aspen. We're going to start here, and I'm going to say that even though we're going to be voyaging to lots of fantasy, imaginary realms now, I want my goal to be this, that as a writer, as a storyteller, I want even the most fantastical places, some very bizarre places that we're going to go, and you'll find in my books. I want them to feel every bit as real as you would feel as if you were walking on this wildflower meadow high in the mountains of Colorado, where you can smell the smell of the flowers and you can feel the cold wind from the snowy mountains on your back, and you can feel the sun on your face and maybe even hear an elk bugling in the distance. That's how real imaginary places have to be to keep smart readers like you guys involved. And that's my goal. Now, should we go to a magical place? Okay, I'm going to start you off with a journey to the most magical island ever. A magical world called Finkyra. This is the place where the greatest wizard of all times, the fellow named Merlin, the original wizard, Merlin, spent his youth, the times when he was the same age as you guys. And that's let me start right there and say that's a little bit strange, because almost everybody's heard of Merlin, right? Raise your hand if you've heard the story of the sword and the stone, where Merlin put that sword in the stone for King Arthur to pull out and become king. Or any number of other stories. If you've heard the stories of Camelot, where Merlin was there, all of those stories, Merlin is a really, really, really old man. He's centuries old. He even knows how to move backwards in time, by the way. He's got a beard that goes all the way down to the floor. He's so old. But it made me start wondering a while ago, how did he get to be that incredibly powerful ancient wizard? How did he begin? And that's what came to be the saga of Merlin, the Merlin saga, which is now 12 books. Because when that great wizard began, he was just the same age as you. And it started on a terrible day. The day that is book 1, page 1 of the Merlin saga. And what happened on that day was, in a very stormy day at sea, a boy washes ashore right here on this coastline. He washes ashore and he's spat out by the sea. This boy, he's 12 years old, he's barely alive. He's so weak, he's almost drowned. And even then, as he washes ashore, the seagulls are screeching overhead, and he barfs seawater, and he's almost dead. Even then, though, the ocean waves are almost trying to pull him back down undersea and drown him. And he has to crawl a little higher with his torn tunic up onto the beach. And finally, he knows he's safe from drowning. And then he sits up and he realizes something even worse has happened to him. Even worse than almost drowning. Even worse than being washed ashore on an unknown place. And that is, he has lost all of his memory. Every bit of it. So, and he's sitting there blinking his eyes. He realizes he has no clue at all where he came from, where he grew up, who his parents were, none of that. Get this, he doesn't even know his own name. Now, in that moment, he's about as far away from being this great exalted wizard Merlin that we've told stories about for centuries as you could possibly get. And in fact, if you looked at him closely, and in that moment, and you said, hey, young man, you're going to grow up to be this great, powerful wizard, he would think you're crazy, beyond crazy. And you know, if you looked at it in that moment, the boy you meet on page 1 of The Lost Years of Merlin, book 1, that boy, if you looked at him and said, you know, that boy has nothing, I would understand why, because he has no memory, he has no past, he has no name even, he has no home, no identity at all. He has nothing. But you know what? That wouldn't be true. Because he does have something. Something down inside. He has a little spark. Let's call it magic. Let's call it a hero. Let's call it whatever you choose to call it. But that spark, if it can just survive this day and all the crazy wild adventures he has to come, that spark could grow and grow and grow into a fire. A huge bonfire that will light its way down through all the centuries of stories. So, there are 5 books about the young Merlin, and by the way, this is the book that's being made into a movie right now by Disney, and I actually just came from a week in Hollywood where they're developing the script and all the elements around the movie of young Merlin. So I'm hoping that when that comes out, that you'll find that the movie does as good a job as you would hope. I have a feeling they're going to do a great job. Of course, though, no movie will be as good as the book, because when you read a book, you get to imagine it, and you're the director, and the actor, and the scriptwriter, and all the voices. So it's personal when you get to read it. Now, those are the 5 books of young Merlin's adventures, but there's actually more in the whole Merlin saga. Next. And let me just introduce you briefly to what else is there. Following the 5 books of young Merlin's adventures is a trilogy that's about Merlin's greatest friend, who actually was the most powerful dragon in the whole universe. So powerful, that dragon was immensely powerful, and together with Merlin, they need all that power as well as all of Merlin's magic in order to try to save that magical isle of Finkyra where he washed ashore, because that island is the stepping stone between Earth and all the immortal worlds. And oh, by the way, that incredibly powerful dragon, his name is Basil. And I should tell you, he's so immensely powerful that his actions can be felt throughout the universe. But I should mention one more thing. That incredibly powerful dragon is not this big guy. That incredibly powerful dragon is this little guy down here. It's true. His name is Basil. And he is only as big as your little pinky finger. That's how big. He'd fit right in the pocket of my shirt, right here. Sometimes I even check to make sure if he's there. But if some of you have visited my website, you've seen Basil floating in and around the pages. He may be small, but he is incredible, let me tell you. And if you want to find out how he gained so much power, you'll find out in the 3 books about Merlin's dragon, which follow the young Merlin saga. Now, next, there's one more trilogy in the Merlin books, and that's a trilogy about a place called the Great Tree of Avalon. And this trilogy, which some of you I know have seen, because I've seen copies and heard from you, I am happy to tell you that this story takes place 1,000 years later, after Merlin's youth, because when he was finally just about to leave that magical realm and go to the earth to become the mentor to King Arthur, he did one last thing, which was he planted a magical seed. A seed that had such immense power, it actually beat like a heart in his hand. And he planted it, and then that seed grew into a great tree, which actually became a world of its own. It had roots the size of continents. It had inner magical worlds inside its trunk, and its branches, well, its branches were passageways to the stars. And that world that is Merlin's greatest creation 1,000 years later is suddenly at risk of being conquered and destroyed by an evil warrior spirit who is in the immortal world and wants to use it to cross over to this world, the earth, which he wants to control and conquer. And the only thing in his way is not Merlin himself, because Merlin is elsewhere at this moment for reasons you'll find out. It's 3 brave young people who are the only ones who have a chance to save this magical world. I should also mention one other thing. Of those 3 young people, one of them is, although he or she doesn't know it, is actually the true heir of Merlin and all Merlin's powers. And I should also mention that one of the kids, one of those 3, he or she, who also doesn't know it, is someone who's been named in a prophecy as being the one person who will destroy all of Merlin's creations, including the great tree of Avalon. Nobody knows who is which, but you'll find out when you read the trilogy, The Great Tree of Avalon. Now, next slide, please. All 12 of the books in the Merlin saga look like this in their paperback. So these 5 books up here are the Young Merlin stories. These 3 are the Merlin's Dragon trilogy, and these 3 are the Great Tree of Avalon. Oh, and this one, this is a kind of a glossary of more than 200 characters and magical objects and awesome places, and some very bizarre places that are in Merlin's worlds that are actually my writing notes from when I was pulling all this saga together, that enough fans wanted me to show the backstories that Penguin published that. So that's available too. Altogether, 12 books about Merlin. Now, that and the movie happening is a lot of fun, but we're now going to voyage to some wholly different places. Let's go. Next, first of all, I'd love to take you to the 3 places that one of my favorite characters, a 12-year-old girl named Kate Gordon, goes to. And you know what? Let me ask you, is anybody here 12 years old? Raise your hand if you are. Terrific. And is anybody 13? Okay, well look, that's when all 3 of these books happen to Kate. In the time between 12 and 13, she goes to a few places you might not have been recently. Like in the book Heartlight, she goes off to another galaxy to save the life of the one person that's her most beloved person in the world, her grandfather, who's in deep trouble. In the ancient one, which is where this map appears, Kate takes a voyage back in time to solve a mystery of what happened to an ancient tribe of Native Americans, an Indian tribe that was right there in what's now the state of Oregon. Until about 500 years ago, something happened and those Indians disappeared. Their whole civilization vanished. And Kate has a big problem right now in her town in Oregon that is also going to be wiped out unless she can find out what is the secret of what really happened to the Indians and maybe come back in time to save her town and her home and the people she loves. And then in this final book of Kate's adventures, called The Merlin Effect, Kate goes down to the bottom of the sea. She goes out in her sea kayak and actually gets caught in a whirlpool that pulls her down to a sunken treasure ship, an ancient pirate ship. And like most pirate ships, it's loaded to the gills with all kinds of gold and silver and jewels and other treasures, but it has one more thing. An object of magical power, such great power that all forces of evil as well as good are trying to get at it. At the same time, Kate gets there. And she just might have to be the one to decide what happens to the object that's called the Merlin effect. Next. Now, all three of these books, by the way, are available in one volume, which is called the Heartlight Saga, that trilogy. So you can get them all in one nice big fat meal if you would like. Next, I want to take you to a whole different place. How many of you have heard the story of Atlantis? Basically, all of you. Well, that's because it's one of the most famous stories in the world. And it was started actually more than 2,000 years ago by Plato himself, when he wrote a tale about Atlantis, an island that was destroyed, partly because of its own excesses and partly because of the sea washing over it and wiping it out. Well, here's the thing about Atlantis, that story which I've always loved. I started to wonder about it. In the same way I started to wonder, we all know the great wizard Merlin and all of his stories, but what was he like before he became that great, exalted, powerful, centuries-old wizard? What was he like when he was the same age as you guys? In that same way, I started to wonder, okay, how did Atlantis not get destroyed, but how did it get created? And what happened that ultimately led to its destruction? And that's why I started my newest trilogy that is begun with this book. It's called Atlantis Rising. Atlantis Rising is book one of the 3 books about my new retelling of the story of Atlantis, and I can now share with you a quick 1-minute trailer that my publisher developed about this book and the trilogy. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Go ahead, hit next. Oh, actually, I should mention the second book in the trilogy has just come out today, and and by the way, yeah, it's my new baby. Tonight, I'll be doing a book event at a wonderful local bookstore I know a lot of you guys know called Willow Books in Acton, and they will have the copies. I have to tell you, I'm so excited. I'm actually deep into book 3. But here now, let me show you the trailer about Atlantis and see what you think. Atlantis. So have fun. Now I'm going to just switch to quickly flip through next. I want to just quickly mention that there are I have lots of smaller books too. One like Tree Girl here is about a young woman who has to do something really, really, really scary in order to find out who she really is. That's the story called Tree Girl. Next. Also, I'll mention that lots of my smaller books take place in wonderful places around the earth, and I really enjoy doing those picture books because I get to team up with an artist, and so we all get to go to places like Easter Island together. Now next, I'm going to finish up my talk with one more book that I've done, which is a very different one that some of you may have seen, which is all about heroic kids, young people, your age, and some of them a little bit older, all of them who, I guess you could say like Merlin, they found themselves in a really tough situation. So in their own lives, they were kind of washed ashore. And just like Merlin, they were at a spot where they really felt lost or alone or hopeless. But just like Merlin, they dug down deep inside and they found something really spectacular. Maybe it was courage. Maybe it was perseverance. Maybe it was compassion or hope. But whatever that magic was, they found that magic of the hero, and they not only helped themselves survive, but they actually helped to make the world a better place. The book, The Hero's Trail, is full of more than 200 stories of real young people. And that's the coolest thing, is that they are genuine, real people that remind you of perhaps somebody you know, or even yourself. And half of the people in the book, The Hero's Trail, are people you've probably heard of. People like Anne Frank, or Ruby Bridges, or Wilma Rudolph. Wilma Rudolph, who had polio at the age of 4, and the doctor wanted to amputate her legs, and she begged her mother to step in and keep her legs, even though they were like spindles and they couldn't work and had no very, very little muscle fiber. And Wilma, by her own determination and her mother's great love, actually worked hard, massaged her muscles, tried to coax strength and life into those legs, and ended up being able to walk. Not only that, she started to run, and she loved the feeling of running, and by the time she was a junior in college, she stunned the world by winning the gold medal in the women's 100-meter dash at the Olympics. Wilma Rudolph. And then she used her fame to help the civil rights movement of the 1960s. So she's a young hero who's in this book. And then, as I said, half of them you'll know, but half you've never heard of. Kids like Juan, or Ellie, or Ryan, who've done really amazing things. So, in fact, I should mention that there are 2 reasons that I'm so interested in heroic young people. One is that they're just plain inspiring. You guys really do renew my hope. And the second is that we are really very confused as a society. We are very confused about what is the difference between a hero and a celebrity. They're often mixed up, but they're really quite different. A celebrity is all about being famous. That's fine as far as it goes, but you could be famous for good reasons or bad reasons. It doesn't say anything about the kind of person you are. Whereas a hero is all about character. It's all about what's inside. It's all about those qualities that young Merlin had, or Kate had, or even little Basil, as big as my little finger, had. It's those qualities. And in fact, I'm so interested in this whole subject that I've started a prize, a national award, that's been running now for more than 10 years, where we choose 25 kids from all around America, next slide, every year, and the winners get a college scholarship that I give them out of my writer's royalties. These are some of the winners here. It's named the A Barron Prize for Young Heroes. I named it after my mom, that gal who was holding the eagle. And now, because there's been a nice documentary film produced about these kids that highlights some of the kids who won the Barron Prize for Young Heroes, I'd like to share that with you too. For 1 minute now, relax and let me introduce you to some of the kids who have won the prize.
I would define a hero as somebody who gives more of themselves than they take, who's always thinking about the people around them, who's really just working their hardest to do what they can to make the world a better place. I think that kids should know that they should dream big.
Dream Big, the inspiring young heroes of the Barron Prize, profiles a diverse group of passionate young people who are making the world a better place.
I think heroes have always been important, but they've never been more important than now.
One person can make a difference, no matter how small the action may be, you can make a difference.
things that really not inspire people by doing things that they can't. Instead, I think I've just shown them that they can do incredible things. And that me, just a normal kid really from the middle of nowhere who uses a wheelchair, can't stand up, can do some things that really make a difference in our people's lives.
These 7 young heroes, all winners of the Barron Prize, are using courage, creativity, and commitment to address a wide range of environmental and community problems.
Today, more than ever, people are disconnected from the natural world, and we're suffering as a planet because of that.
We have to start cleaning up the earth, or else our grandchildren and our children are going to have to deal with it.
We have in our midst, though, young people who have connected the dots and realized that if we can take care of our planet, the planet will take care of us.
Dream Big also includes an in-depth interview with Jane Goodall, who speaks about her dreams and inspirations as a young girl and encourages young people to change the world.
Where other people said, Jane, dream about something you can achieve, my mother said, Jane, if you really want something, and you work hard, and you take advantage of opportunities, and you never give up. And I get hundreds of letters saying, Jane, you taught me that because you did it, I can do it too.
To me, a hero is a person who decides that there's something that they can do to better their life or to better someone else's life, and they make that happen, they make it possible.
I think a hero is someone who has the courage to do what's right.
It's perseverance, courage, humility, humor, faith, hope, all of those things. That's what really makes a hero.
Each young hero shares a unique story of dreaming big, overcoming obstacles, and affecting change.
I had this idea, this huge idea, but in order to get anywhere, you have to take the first steps, and that's what I did.
And each of them demonstrates the power of one person to make a difference.
Thank you. Jim, why don't you put up the next slide? I just want to say, I've talked to a lot of students and a lot of groups all around the country and now around the world. You guys are special. I really am enjoying a lot how involved you are in all of this. And now it's the best time of all, which is your time to ask any questions. Let me just first ask, Barbara, what is our time? How much time do we have?
About 5 minutes or less.
Okay, we have time for a couple questions, and then let me just say in advance, if we don't get to answer your question, there's 2 ways to solve that problem. One is you can write to me on my website. Once you click forward, Jim, to the slide that has my books up. Yeah. My website, which is just my name, tabarron.com, or my Facebook fan page, TA Barron Fans. And I'll always answer your question. I answer every single week. There's hundreds of comments or questions, emails that I get, but I always answer. So it may take me a little while, but I will get you back. The other way is, if you'd like, come tonight to Willow Books in Acton, where I'll be there this evening, and bring your parents, and we're going to have a wonderful time. We always do at Willow Books. So I'm happy to, and I'll have more time to answer questions then. So, to start off, how about you, right there, with your hand? Yes, you, yes. Can you just say it loud, please? Okay, the names of my kids, I'm going to just tell you real fast, so we have time for one more question. One is named Denali. Anybody know where that mountain is? Oh, you shouldn't have done that. Just keep it where it is. The mountain, no, just go back one slide earlier. There you go. Just stay right there, Jim. And now, Denali is named for the highest peak in North America that's up in Alaska. It's also where Denali National Park is. It's an Athabascan Indian name. Her brother's name is Brooks, for the Brooks Range, way up by the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, above the Arctic Circle, an amazing place to go camping. And then remember that redhead I pointed out? His name, people think, oh, you poor kid, you didn't get a mountain name. Your name is Ben. And you know what? Is anybody named Ben here in this room? Well, if you are, you may not know it, but the name Ben is also the ancient Scottish Gaelic word for mountain. So the highest peak in Scotland is named Ben Nevis, and that red-haired boy is named Ben Nevis Barron. The boy in the black t-shirt is named Ross. He's named after a mountain in New Zealand, and also the Ross Ice Shelf, named for the same person. And the little girl in my backpack, her name is Larkin. That's a wonderful mountain in the Bitterroot Range that's right in the northern Rockies between Montana and Idaho. Now, I have time for one more question, then I have a little surprise for you. How about you, young lady right there with the white? Yes, you. Can you speak up, please? We've got two people going, but you first. You first, yes. Okay, my process for writing books is I start with an idea, like actually that idea of a boy washing ashore and becoming the great wizard Merlin was that idea that kicked off the Merlin books. And then I try to tell the story as if I'm telling it to bright young people like you guys, and then I work and write, and sometimes it takes a year and a half or 2 years to finish all the rewrites. I rewrite every story 7, 8, 9 times. Until I'm finally ready to share it with all of you. And now you in the white shirt, what was, yes, you who started, yes. What was your question? In the white shirt, yes. You were just starting. What's your question? This is your moment. I can't hear you, unfortunately. Oh, how long did it take to write my first book? Well, here's the story about that. My first book, I wrote it when I was hiking and traveling in Europe and in Asia, in the Himalayas. And I came back home and I sent this book off thinking it would kick off my writing career. And I sent it to 32 different publishers. And pretty quickly, I got rejections from every one of them. 32 publishers said, zero, forget it. Even some of them said, go try a different job. There's no way you'll ever write books. Well, that sort of stayed in my mind. It did knock me flat for a while, but then 7 years later, I tried again. And I quit my job as actually president of a company. Totally shocked my partners, which was really fun, by the way. And said, I know our financial results are really good, but I have this dream of being a writer, and I'm going to quit today and move back to Colorado to see if I can write a book somebody might like to read, which I don't have any evidence could happen. Well, that was 24 years ago and 31 books ago. So that's the end of that story. So I'm glad I had the chance to try a second time. Now, because we're almost out of time, would you guys like to see what my new book is that comes out today? Okay, real quick, hit next. That's what the cover looks like, and hit next, and here's what that book is about.
I have written so many books about Merlin that sometimes I feel like I've actually met book readers. And who knows? Maybe I have. If I met Merlin and he's crystal clear, I'd ask him just one question. Not a big question, mind you, just what is the meaning of life? And if there is a meaning, how can I find it? He'd look at me with eyes both very old and very young, and he'd say, that won't take long, lad. The answer has just 7 words. And they are the most magical words in the universe. He'd talk about each of those words, plus one more word that empowers them all. In what he revealed, there would be a hint of an answer, and a touch of Merlin magic.
Thanks, everybody. And now, you know what I said before, I want to say it one more time. You have been fabulous. You really have been. I've loved being here. I hope you'll enjoy my books just as much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. You're terrific. Please do write me if you have any other questions, and think about coming tonight. Hope to see you tonight at Willow Books in Acton. Thanks.